Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bravery in the Boardroom in Conversation With. And this afternoon, I am welcoming back one of our guests from our very first Bravery in the Boardroom webinar. So good afternoon to Taps Mtemachani. If you haven't met Taps before, Taps is the Director of Transformation and Partnership at Country ICB. And if you did join us for Bravery in the Boardroom Midlands session, you'll remember that, oh my gosh, Taps dropped so many gems. I am so grateful to have him back today. And Taps will be sharing a little bit about his journey into his role in the ICB now, some of the challenges that he faced along the way, but also he'll be sharing, more importantly, and what I think is important, how his role is really integral into leading and tackling inequalities in the area that he works in up in the Midlands. So without further ado, good afternoon, Taps, and welcome back.
Good afternoon, Monique. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. So Taps, I remember on the Midlands webinar, you shared so many gems that I was like, we want more. And we had so much feedback that we want more. But most importantly, I think people really felt a connection to your journey into the boardroom, where you started from, how you navigated it, and then kind of what led you to where you are now. So it would be great if you could share that with us again, just those steps that got you there.
Yeah, sure, Monique. I'll get into that in a moment. But let me just start off by saying once again, thank you for the opportunity to share some of these gems. Hopefully, they'll prove to be really, really powerful and useful for somebody who's looking to progress within the NHS or even within a kind of local government or public sector more widely. It was a great panel, Monique, that we had for Bravery in the Boardroom, the first session. Really, really powerful individuals that we had on that panel. And so the gems were not just for me to drop. It was the entire panel was absolutely powerful. And I got a lot from that session as well. But again, the agenda that in fact, the platform that you have created here, Monique, is a really powerful platform, which is about engaging colleagues and particularly aspirant colleagues on this agenda of actually progressing within management and also within leadership. So it's a powerful platform in of itself that we've got this opportunity to talk about these kind of things. My journey has not been linear. It's not a linear journey. There's no true Scotsman in terms of getting there or wherever there is. I actually don't believe in reaching or getting there. I think life is a lifelong pursuit of actually adding value to our society. And that's the prism through which I view my progress and my life more generally. What am I adding to our society? What am I adding to the community around me? Even if it's a smaller community, i.e. An organization, what are you bringing to the organization in which you work? So I don't view it as a linear process at all. I view it as very much an undulating process where you go up and down in terms of how you feel you're making kind of impact in terms of your journey. I started off as a nurse on my journey. So I trained as a general nurse in Staffordshire University. I worked in nursing in the hospital, I think, for 9 months before I moved into the community. And I did the vast majority of my kind of nursing career was in community nursing. Now, in community nursing, I had the opportunity once, and it was really powerful at the time when I got this opportunity. But I developed a project around starting intravenous antibiotic therapy. I just couldn't get the words. Intravenous therapy in the community. Now, it was groundbreaking at the time, and there was only a few trusts in the country that were actually delivering those IV antibiotics actually in the community. So I put in a proposal to the Queen's Nursing Institute And I was one of the 7 projects nationally that were funded to provide those, to deliver that project. And so that's how we started delivering intravenous antibiotic therapy in northern Staffordshire. It was on the back of the work that I led on with the Queen's Nursing Institute. But that gave me a window into project management, because as part of that project, I was offered project management training by the Queen's Nursing Institute and some supervision and coaching, etc., through the institute as well. And so that kind of set me up really in terms of starting to think about where I saw myself in terms of adding value to not only the organization but also to society. I could see that starting to form in my mind. So project management was the thing that I think I got from that. And so, kind of fast forward maybe a couple of years after that, I got my first job into commissioning, which was as a commissioning support and development manager. And I got to work on the first day, and I was told my line manager had changed. So the line manager had been allocated. I had been allocated a different one, and the man I was to be line managed by he's called Dave Sanzeri. I'll never forget that name. He was the head of commissioning at the time in Stoke-on-Trent CCG, and he gave me some work to do, which is around implementing integrated local care teams across Stoke-on-Trent, which is no mean feat, because it was a really complex project, which you had to work with primary care, you had to work with kind of community nursing, district nursing, intermediate care, all of the kind of multidisciplinary teams, etc., to ensure that you've got that kind of cross-agency working within within community. Essentially, that's what those integrated local care teams were. And it was actually in that time period where everything was very much about integrated care.
Yes.
And so that was my first job in commissioning, a very hard job. I had to get my head around that and project management at scale. So moving on and graduating from my IV antibiotic therapy kind of project, this was triple XL. Moving from small and medium into triple XL.
In quite a short space of time as well.
In a short space of time, I went on a steep learning curve, and this was in commissioning. I've never done commissioning before. It was really, really challenging, and Dave was the most challenging manager you could ever have. He turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me in that period of time. He was very challenging, very strict, very, very easy. He was very British. Stiff upper lip, all of that, I had it all. And, but he had a soft center. He had a soft center. And I got to understand that as time went. I didn't understand that to start off with. Okay. And I was working as a band 6 at that time. I dropped a band actually coming out of nursing, dropped a band to go into commissioning. And so it was really, really tough. But those years were really important formative years that will prepare me for the role that I'm actually doing now, because that was at the inception of integrated working, Monique. So now I'm working in an integrated care system. I'm an executive on the integrated care board in the Black Country. All of it is about integrated care. How do we join up services to make experience and outcomes for our patients better? Yeah, so that's how it kind of started. So it hasn't been linear. There've been ups and downs. Like I said, I dropped a band to go into commissioning.
Can I ask why you did that? So can I ask that, Taps, there? So that's a big decision. So you like you said, you're starting to grow. You're building your journey. There's 2 things there, if I could ask. One is about switching from nursing into commissioning, but also the decision to drop a band, so come down a level. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, that was a product of foolhardiness. If I'm absolutely honest, because I just felt
You're
like
always honest.
But I say it's foolhardiness, but it actually wasn't. It was focus. Yeah, it wasn't just youth. It was focus. I was determined that actually what I wanted for myself was more of a business management role than a clinical role. Yes. I was very clear about that. Yes. Now, that said, the clinical role was so important in preparing me for this business administration role. I couldn't join and connect the two at the time, but in retrospect, you kind of see how important it was. The clinical role was important in terms of leveling me, yeah, and grounding me, essentially, maturing me, because it was a very, very responsible job. Going out and seeing people who are extremely vulnerable in their own homes specifically. I mean, that is some responsibility. So that was important in terms of that. I've already mentioned the IV project aspect. Yes. That was also important. But all of these were informative to me around actually who I want to be in life and what I want to do in life. So by the time I got to that opportunity, I was very, very focused on, I want to work in business management. That's where I feel my skills will be best utilized. And so when the opportunity came, Monique, you kind of weigh it and you think, well, okay, is it about money or is it about purpose? Yeah. So for me, it was about purpose. Right. So that's what drove my decision making. Yeah. Yes. And so I started that journey, and it was very much a journey of focus. And I'm still on the journey of focus even now. You know, even I'm working at arguably, you know, some of the highest levels in commissioning. I'm on the executive team, but my job's not finished yet. Yeah. I have not reached. You know, I want to continue to make a difference in our society, and I will not stop and I will not relent until I feel satisfied that I've done everything I can to make society better.
So tell me more about that drive, because I think you can hear and feel the passion in you making those decisions, focus being part of that. You know, like you said, I love what you were sharing there about, may not have realized at the time, but in retrospect, it's really shaped me and given you the tools to where you are now. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your role now, because, you know, you touched on it slightly, but you are in the leadership team of an ICB. So tell our audience a little bit more about it. So those who aren't as familiar with the NHS, it'd be great for you to just explain where an ICB sits in the system.
Okay, so, you know, we've got these new statutory structures called the ICS. It's held in statute now. It's legal. It's got a legal basis in our law. And so within that, you've got two kind of key aspects of that structure. You've got the ICB, which is the Integrated Care Board, and then you've got the ICP, which is the Integrated Care Partnership. The ICB is a statutory organization, and the ICP is a statutory committee. So it's not an entity as such, but the ICB is an entity. So, you know, people will be familiar with what we had before, which was clinical commissioning groups. Yes. Well, this is now, the ICB is now, you know, a kind of a graduation, if you like, from clinical commissioning groups. So we're responsible for planning and for purchasing healthcare on behalf of a population, and the population that I serve is the Black Country. So you've got the Integrated Care Partnership, which is the partnership committee, where you've got local authorities, you've got VCSE partners, you've got wider partners. In some instances, they've even got housing on those integrated care partnerships. That's essentially about how we collaborate wider than the NHS. Yes. Yeah, to ensure that we deliver optimum population health and outcomes for our population. In my case, it's across the Black Country. So because I work in the Integrated Care Board, which is a statutory organization, we obviously have to have those structures. We've got an executive leadership structure. which is headed up by Mark Axel, who's my chief executive officer, and I report to Mark. And there's about 9 or 10 of us that report directly to Mark. And then sitting underneath that, you've got the rest of the ICB staffing. And I think we've got about between 400 and 500 staff that work in the ICB. And then within that construct of ICS, yes, you've got the ICB, you've got the ICP, but you've got all of the constituent organizations that form the ICS in its entirety. So you've got all the provider organizations, your NHS trusts,
yes.
Be that mental health or physical health trusts. You've got all of that. You've got also your kind of voluntary sector organizations that are tethered to each of our places in the Black Country. We've got the place-based VCSC infrastructure organization, but we've also got an alliance across the Black Country as well that supports those activities that are best done right across the geography. So those are the kind of key kind of organizational kind of constructs, if you like, of integrated care systems across the country. And there's 42 of them across England. Yeah.
So noting your role, because in understanding that, people can get a bit more understanding about the importance of the ICB and also the coverage, isn't it? The size, the coverage, the space that you cover, and the partners that you work with. Notwithstanding, your title is Director of Transformation and Partnerships. So I know that a big part of your role, you are the person, the architect, trying to bring everybody together. And I'd really like to understand from you, in terms of being a senior Black leader in that space, when quite often you are the minority, be great to understand a little bit more from your perspective. How does that really feel?
Yeah, it's tough. The reality is, this is the society we live in. It's well catalogued that we've got, kind of racism and discrimination, and it's systemic up and down the country. So I'm not exempt from that. That is just the reality of present day society. But within my organization, I'm very, very blessed, actually. The organization I work in, we're making real strides towards inclusivity, which is part of the reason why I'm one of the executives, because I also advocate and stand for ethnic minority communities. In as much as my colleague Ananta Davi, who was actually on the panel, she does exactly the same. And we've got Shajida Ahmed, who's also from an ethnic minority background. We've got Saab Bassi, who's the Director of Primary Care, who's also from a ethnic minority background. So we've got a really good mix of people in our executive board. So we're leading by example in the ICB. Now, the challenge is to have the whole system doing the same.
Yes.
That is the enduring challenge. So is it tough for me? Yes, it's tough. But am I fruitful? Yes, I am. I'm fruitful because my substance will speak for me. Where we've got prejudices, substance will rise. Yeah, prejudice. You've got to see prejudice as the kind of the lighter material that just kind of sinks. The real stuff that that matters is the stuff that will rise above all of the nonsense, really, because it is just nonsense. You've got to bring substance to the table. Now, I've been leading the work on health inequalities for a year now. Well, nearly 2 years now. In fact, next week it'll be 2 years since I've been appointed. I started off obviously within the CCG, and now in the ICB, so it's a completely different entity. But I've been so blessed to continue in my role as a Director of Transformation and Partnership. What have I done? I've done a lot, and like I said, the substance has been speaking for itself. In terms of the products that I've been bringing forward, the partnerships I've been building, working with directors of public health. I've been working with housing chief execs and directors from housing associations across the patch. I've been working with the Combined Authority and colleagues from the Combined Authority, West Midlands Combined Authority. I've been working with a number of people that I've been collaborating with. And that is, in essence, building a vision of what we could do differently in terms of addressing health inequalities. So my work as a director is to set the vision.
Yes.
And have a clear strategy on what the panacea is, what the outcome objective is that we want to achieve, but also laying down the path. Yeah. So I've been doing that. One of the key things for me is about how do we achieve economic equity? Because money talks.
Yes.
And it is actually money that is causing a lot of the inequalities that we're experiencing up and down the country right now. So let me explain that a little bit. Professor Marmot talks about deprivation as a key factor, and also discrimination. The two colluding together, he refers to those as syndemic factors that drive inequalities. So discrimination and deprivation. Now the two are linked in my mind. That's why I'm working towards economic equity, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But those two factors, discrimination and deprivation, are factors that we need to look at, and they're linked because we've got a whole post-industrial legacy, that we've inherited in this country. When we're the decommissioning of some of the aspects or the key aspects of industry within our country. So I live in Staffordshire. The potteries was big for us in Staffordshire. In the Black Country where I work, glassworks was absolutely massive. In steelworks, absolutely massive, and most of that industry infrastructure has been decommissioned. So what that does, it leaves a residual of people, and particularly breadwinners, who have been de-skilled, disenfranchised, from what they knew to do. So what that's done is it's caused a deficit in confidence and dignity amongst the breadwinners. And then you see that kind of, carrying on in legacy in terms of generations after, and families have been built on that deficit of competence and dignity within our kind of local societies. So when you've got foreigners coming into the country, for example, like me, and start getting these jobs and stuff, what you then have is a disconnection with kind of indigenous society, because they're kind of wondering, look, we've been disenfranchised, from what we knew to do. We've been de-skilled in some ways. We've lost our confidence, and yet all the focus and opportunities are on these foreigners. So that's what goes on, and that's what fuels what we then term racism. And it is racism, but that's the root of where it's coming from. It's an issue of, actually, we need to sort out the post-industrial legacy. We need to sort out the welfare system, because it's actually shoring up that lack of confidence and that lack of dignity in communities. That's the heart of the problem. This is not, I'm not a politician, but I'm just telling you how I view things in terms of addressing health inequalities. You've got to look at the root causes of things and sort out the causes, not just the symptoms. So for me, the plan and the vision in terms of addressing health inequalities has got to be about economic equity. So how do we reskill, upskill, and employ people from local communities, be they indigenous or foreign? How do we give them or opportunities and get them into gainful employment? Because once you sorted out the bread issue, once you sorted out the stomach issues, then we're able to address some of the symptomatic issues that we then see surfacing within our communities. So the whole economic equity piece for me is about how do we shift towards that. Within health, it's about how do we shift the balance of resource allocation, right, from being heavily weighted towards kind of curative and treatment-based services. to be more kind of heavily weighted towards proactivity and prevention, yeah, which is very much about communities. How do we enable our communities to look after themselves, to be far more able and capable of looking after themselves, yeah? So that's the prevention agenda. It's a self-care agenda. It's an empowerment agenda. It's about strengths and identifying the strengths within our communities and enabling that from a kind of financing and resourcing sort of perspective. So from a health and care perspective, that's what I'm working on in terms of getting towards economic equity. And then on a kind of more macro kind of level, it's about how do we shift the dialogue from just talking about just racism into talking about the issues that cause racism, so the causality or the core factors, yeah? That's where we want to actually get into. So my job is about setting that strategic direction. I'm a thought leader. I think about these things, and then I start to set the path on how do we actually kind of get there. It's a long-term piece of work. You're not going to address health inequalities overnight.
And I think that's such an important point, last point that you make there about, setting the vision, giving clarity to what we should be focusing on. So connecting what you just said there, Taps, to, I know you also have a passion for wanting to see, like, the people, when you was explaining about deprivation and discrimination and seeing those almost why jointly they cause so much damage. And they affect people's confidence, they affect people's opportunity for attainment, etc. How are you using your power and influence? Because I know you're passionate, like I said, about seeing talent develop, supporting people from minoritized backgrounds, giving people opportunity and a chance. How are you using your power and influence in the ICB to help more of that happen?
Yeah, so I'm doing mentoring. I'm mentoring. So I mentor a few people within our system and actually beyond our system as well. So I meet with them regularly, I talk to them, and I'm very open. And one of my key principles is authenticity. You've got to be real as a mentor if you really want to give something of yourself to people. Yeah. So yeah, I've got an open door policy in terms of that with my mentees. But also in terms of supporting some of our networks within the ICB. So I support the kind of inclusion network and the kind of what we call the free network, which is Forum for Race, Equality and Equity network, which used to be the kind of ethnic minority kind of network. So we've progressed that conversation into freedom.
Yes. Yes.
Essentially, yeah. Yes. So I support those as an executive. But also it's the things that I've already articulated, Monique, which is about how do we shift the balance of resourcing, because that will get underneath the problem. And then also how do we shift the dialogue to talk about causes, not just symptoms. So systematically and societally, that's where I'm looking for my kind of impact to be really.
And how does that connect for you? So in knowing that, like you said, your words have power, that in the role that you have, that you have a prominent role. And I know from our last session that many people got in touch with you to be mentored. But if you were speaking to them, if you were speaking to our audience today and you were talking to them about, almost I want to ask it as if it was like a live mentoring question. What would be that advice? What would be that one piece of advice that you'd give me as an aspiring executive in the audience about progressing my career into the boardroom? What would you want to say to me?
My one word is this, and it will always be this: humility. Humility is absolutely key in this. Yeah. So why is humility key? Because actually, you have to have that aptitude to learn. I've been looking at social media, right? YouTube specifically. It's replete with people lecturing people.
Yes.
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm thinking, so if you've got so many lecturers, where are the learners?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's, for me, starts to show you that, there's something wrong with our society where everyone's a teacher. There's no one learning. There's no one learning. So the aptitude to learn is absolutely imperative for your growth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you think you know it all, then you're never going to know it all.
And what would you?
Yeah, because it's not before.
So, and take building on that, if I may, in terms of having humility. No, if I say it this way, knowing that there's always something to learn, keep learning. I think is what you're saying. In terms of you spoke at the beginning of our conversation about having a very stern and strict but brilliant manager. You spoke about the brave move I think you made to switch because you had that focus. You knew you wanted to get into business management. And you spoke about that understanding of doing that pioneering project and what that brought for you.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you'd want to share with our aspiring execs about what helped you on your journey into the boardroom?
I think you've kind of touched on it a little bit there, Monique. Know what you want. I think it's important to know what you want. Understand your purpose in life. And it's got to be more than money. Money is not a purpose. It's an aid to purpose, but it's not the purpose. It shouldn't be the purpose. For some people, it might be. But know your purpose and let that drive you. Be focused on that purpose and be patient. Be patient not only with others, but also with yourself. It goes back to my point around aptitude to learn. We haven't you haven't known it all. We haven't eclipsed what it means to be a professional leader. Yeah. Nobody's eclipsed it. Yeah. We're all continuing to learn in terms of that. So there's something about, be prepared to learn, but be patient with yourself in that process. And don't get impatient with yourself around, I should have achieved X amount by now, or whatever that discourse might be in your mind. Everyone's journey is different. So my journey is going to be different from the next person. Don't judge yourself against others. Yeah. So it's important, your originality. That's why I said authenticity is important to me in terms of how I relate with my mentees. I think it's an important quality for all of us, to be your real self. Yes. Yeah. And when you do that, you appraise yourself. And I'm a reflective thinker. Yes. I reflect a lot. Yeah. It's important to take time to take stock of where you're at, where you need to get to. Write it down. I always have plans written down. So 5-year plan. It started off as a 15-year plan, and then it got into a 10-year plan, and then I thought, no, actually I need a 5-year plan. So now I'm working on 5-year plans. And on some of my, kind of my deliverables, I'm ahead within that 5-year plan, but I've written the vision down. Yeah. So it's important to write it down so that you can own it.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, it feeds into that whole focus aspect as well. And I think reflection is also important in terms of that, and reflexivity, which is a kind of thinking in motion and reflecting in motion and making decisions and stuff. Albert Einstein said, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. Apparently he said this. I can't verify it, but apparently he said this, and it actually chimes with me. The longer we stay with the problems and really understand the problems, then we would be able to come up with solutions that are more kind of impactful and meaningful. If we glib on in terms of, if we don't spend enough time thinking about the problem and go straight to solutions, you can end up barking up the wrong tree.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to reflect and think about where you're at, what you're achieving, what the issues are, etc. Think about that. Spend time thinking about your context and your problem. Yeah. And less time thinking about solutions.
So I hear the drive. You said to me you had a 15-year plan, a 10-year plan, you're down to 5 years. And I hear the drive in you stronger than ever. You know, I can hear the passion for the vision in your voice. What keeps you topped up? What keeps you staying in that strength of space, that determination, Taps? Because it just oozes out of you.
Okay, so the first thing is that I'll be, you know, straight and blunt about this. I have a faith, and I believe in God, and so my faith grounds me, you know, and my faith in God and in Jesus Christ keeps me going. That's the bottom line. So, you know, what your faith is, whatever your faith is, I think lean into that. My faith is in the Lord Jesus, and so that keeps me anchored, that keeps me driving and hopeful, but also knowing what I want in life and knowing what I don't want in life is also important. And also the, you know, family support. You know, I've got a really supportive wife. You know, she helps me and keeps me on my toes the best of time. But she keeps me level. Accountability, Monique, is really, really important. Be that in terms of faith, or be that in terms of human relationships. Accountability is absolutely key. Why? Because it keeps you learning, learning about yourself and learning about your impact. How it's felt. You know, I did a leadership course once. I think it was part of my leadership degree, and one of the questions that we had was, how does it feel to be on the receiving end of you? And I think that's a really pertinent question to ask ourselves all the time, particularly if you're working in public service. You know, what's my impact? We do these 360-degree surveys that we have. We have it as part of the exec team kind of PDP and stuff. You know, where you're asked to reflect on yourself and others also to give you feedback about yourself. You do an internal 360. Talk to all of the respective parties of you that constitute you. You know, upraise yourself, think about yourself, and reflect about your impact and your learning. I think that's really important in terms of keeping accountable not only to yourself but also to others. And also friendships and mentorship and sponsorship. All of that is really, really important in terms of progress, Monique.
I think
so. I've got mentors. I've got about 3 of them right now. I've got about 3 mentors, you know, and I've got a stretch mentor as well. You know, absolutely imperative that you have that, and you know, cultivate those relationships. They take time and patience. I think it's important to have those in place. Do you know, I was surprised. I was talking to somebody once, and I suggested mentorship, and this person was just, you know, umming and ahhing about whether or not they want to have a mentor. Now, I couldn't believe, I was gobsmacked, because now I make no assumptions about whether or not people understand or believe in mentorship. I have to say it. That's why I'm saying it now.
No, I think, Taps, I think you've shared so much about your journey and your story, but really helping us to understand what helped you to transition, to stick at it when it was difficult, to be brave enough to try some pioneering new work. But what I heard throughout the whole conversation we've had today is about your focus and clarity of where you want to be. Really hit me front and center. And I think you've been so generous with your advice in terms of what, you know, our audience who want to get into the boardroom, you know, who want to progress in their career to whatever point that will be, really hearing that loud and clear from you about having humility, to keep learning, to hold yourself accountable, but also to make use of mentors, you know, make use of recording your goals as well, and to also set plans for different periods and see how you're getting on. But the bit what really hit me with what you said today and what you shared so profoundly is about impact. Understand your own impact. understand who you are, understand how you are received by others. And I think that's so powerful, because what I really heard from you as well is about the power of self and how your faith underpins your power of self. And, you know, I knew you would share so many words of wisdom today, but actually what I love about speaking with you is that is so clear, you know, in what you share and why you're guiding us on this about in our journeys, you know, to be greater, to fulfill our career and leadership potential, is that clarity of your advice, you know. So it's not just powerful advice, but I appreciate how clear it is. And just before we finish up, also to thank you for sharing your insights about inequalities, where they stem from, why they are endemic in society. And actually what you said there was, it's so important that we understand the cause and the problems there, and not so that we labor and stay negative on focusing on problems, but I think what I heard you say, so that we can truly understand what are going to be the right long-term solutions to really tackle inequalities and to achieve what you said is actually your primary focus, achieving economic equity for all. So I think we'll really appreciate you sharing that as well, to help us have a better understanding of inequalities from your perspective too. So just want to say thank you so much for your time today, Taps. And I think watch out for part 3, because I know there's more that we can talk about too. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Like I said, you know, this is a bit of a snapshot, Monique, in terms of this conversation that we've had. There's a lot more behind this, and certainly in terms of the economic equity stuff. And, you know, I know that I've thrown in there some hypotheses and stuff like that, and there'll be people that will want to challenge that and understand that a little bit more. More than happy to have conversations with absolutely anyone about this kind of stuff. But that's where I'm at. That's my thinking, and I believe in just being open and honest and authentic in terms of that thinking. But thank you for this platform and the ability to kind of share opportunity, rather, to share this my life story.
You're most welcome, Taps. And just before we finish off, as you said, if people want to take up that invitation to carry on a conversation and connect with you, where's the best place to find you on social media?
Oh, so I'm on LinkedIn. So I can be found on LinkedIn, Taps Mtemachani. On LinkedIn, I can also be emailed at work. So it's tapiwa.mtemachani@nhs.net. I'm also on Twitter, which is TapsM7. I don't know, you know, Twitter, whatever. Just find me on there.
Thank you so much. And we'll share your social media handles when we share the recording link for this as well. So thank you so much, Taps, and take care.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you very much. Bye for now.